What is the core concept of Sherlock Holmes's thinking process? At its heart, Sherlock Holmes's method is the application of the scientific method to all aspects of life. This involves a rigorous process of observation, hypothesis formation, deduction, and continual refinement. Holmes emphasizes the importance of starting with a strong foundation of knowledge, just as a scientist builds upon a base of established principles. He stresses the need to be actively engaged in the process of thinking, constantly questioning assumptions, and meticulously analyzing every detail. What is the brain attic analogy, and how does it relate to thinking effectively? Holmes compares the human mind to an empty attic, which we furnish with the information and experiences we choose to retain. He argues that a cluttered and disorganized attic hinders efficient thinking, just as a messy workspace hampers productivity. The key to effective thought, according to Holmes, lies in carefully selecting what information we allow into our brain attic and organizing it in a way that facilitates easy retrieval and application. How do biases and heuristics influence our judgments and decision-making? Our brains rely on mental shortcuts, called heuristics, to simplify complex information and make quick judgments. These shortcuts, while efficient, can lead to systematic biases that color our perceptions and decisions. For example, the halo effect causes us to attribute positive qualities to someone based on a single favorable trait, while the effect heuristic influences our judgments based on our current emotional state. Recognizing these biases is the first step towards mitigating their impact. What role does priming play in shaping our perceptions and responses? Priming refers to the phenomenon where exposure to certain stimuli unconsciously influences our subsequent thoughts and behaviors. For example, being exposed to words related to old age can subtly influence us to walk slower, even without our conscious awareness. Holmes highlights the importance of recognizing these subtle environmental influences and their potential to sway our judgments. He advocates for actively controlling our attention and focusing on relevant details while filtering out extraneous factors. How does motivation influence memory encoding and retrieval? We are more likely to remember information that we find interesting and relevant to our goals. This principle, known as the motivation to remember (MTR), underscores the importance of actively engaging with information and connecting it to our existing knowledge base. When we are motivated to learn something, we pay more attention, process it more deeply, and are more likely to recall it when needed. How can we overcome the negative effects of biases and improve our judgment? By cultivating mindfulness and motivation, we can actively combat the influence of biases. Mindfulness involves being present and attentive to our thought processes, acknowledging our biases, and consciously seeking objective evidence. Motivation fuels our desire to learn and improve, driving us to challenge our assumptions and refine our thinking. How does Holmes's approach to observation differ from the average person's? While everyone observes, Holmes observes actively. He scrutinizes every detail, questions assumptions, and filters his perceptions through the lens of his vast knowledge and experience. He understands the limitations of intuition and actively combats the influence of biases by constantly challenging his own judgments and seeking objective evidence. How can we apply Holmes's methods to improve our own thinking? We can all benefit from adopting Holmes's principles of mindful observation, critical thinking, and continual learning. By cultivating self-awareness, practicing skepticism, and actively engaging with information, we can sharpen our minds, improve our judgment, and make more informed decisions. Remember, becoming a better thinker is a journey, not a destination, and with consistent effort, we can all strive to approach the world with a more Holmesian mindset. How does Sherlock Holmes achieve his extraordinary observational abilities? Holmes doesn't just passively observe, he actively engages with his surroundings. His process begins with selective attention, focusing on details that are relevant to his goal. He avoids distractions and biases by maintaining an objective mindset, separating facts from subjective interpretations. Holmes then utilizes all his senses, considering the presence and absence of stimuli, to ensure he doesn't miss crucial information. Why is it so challenging to pay attention effectively? Our brains are wired for mind wandering, making sustained attention difficult. We have limited attentional resources, meaning focusing on one thing comes at the expense of others. Our emotions and pre-existing beliefs can unconsciously influence what we notice and how we interpret it, leading to biased observations. How can we improve our attention and observation skills? Start by setting clear goals to guide your attention. Train yourself to be objective, separating facts from assumptions and biases. Practice being inclusive, utilizing all your senses and considering the absence of information as potentially significant. What is the role of imagination in effective thinking? Imagination allows us to move beyond the immediately obvious and consider alternative possibilities. It helps us break free from linear thinking and explore different perspectives, leading to a more comprehensive understanding of a situation. How can we cultivate and sustain our imagination? Cultivate a mindset of curiosity and openness to new information. Engage in unrelated activities like taking walks, listening to music, or pursuing hobbies to create psychological distance and allow for unconscious processing. Practice mental techniques like visualization and meditation to enhance focus and explore hypothetical scenarios. What is the genius loci, and how does it relate to observation? The genius loci refers to the spirit or atmosphere of a place. Holmes believes that changing our physical location can trigger different memories, emotions, and associations, allowing us to see a situation from a fresh perspective and enhance our understanding. What is the importance of engaged passivity in observation? Engaged passivity describes a state of intense focus on the object of observation while minimizing distractions from the surrounding environment. It is the opposite of disengaged activity, where our attention is divided and scattered. Engaged passivity allows us to fully absorb information and make more accurate judgments. Why is it essential to consider omitted information in our observations? Often, the absence of something can be just as significant as its presence. We tend to overlook what we don't perceive up front, leading to incomplete conclusions. Actively seeking out missing information and considering its potential impact is crucial for making sound judgments. What is deduction as practiced by Sherlock Holmes? Deduction, for Holmes, isn't simply arriving at a specific instance from a general principle. He uses a combination of reasoning methods, always starting from observed facts and reaching a conclusion that must logically follow. This systematized common sense involves eliminating the impossible to arrive at the truth, however improbable it may seem. Why is deduction often difficult? Our brains naturally gravitate towards storytelling, creating narratives even if they're inaccurate. We prefer simple, intuitive explanations, even if they are wrong. This tendency to jump to conclusions without fully considering all the evidence can hinder proper deduction. What is the left brain interpreter, and how does it affect our reasoning? Michael Gazzaniga, through his research with split brain patients, coined the term left brain interpreter to describe the left hemisphere's tendency to seek explanations and create stories, even if they are not accurate. This interpreter can lead us astray by constructing plausible narratives that are not grounded in reality. How does separating the crucial from the incidental improve deduction? To deduce effectively, we must distinguish between crucial and incidental information. We often give undue weight to irrelevant details, hindering our ability to focus on the most important facts. Like Holmes sifting through evidence, we must carefully analyze and prioritize the information to reach a valid conclusion. What is the Lucretius underestimation, and how does it limit our reasoning? The Lucretius underestimation refers to our tendency to limit our understanding of what is possible based on our own experiences. We often fail to consider the improbable because it falls outside our personal frame of reference, hindering our ability to explore all potential solutions. How can we overcome the challenges of proper deduction? To overcome deductive challenges, we should cultivate mindfulness by actively questioning our assumptions, considering alternative explanations, and separating crucial from incidental details. Articulating our thoughts, seeking feedback, and consciously challenging our habits help us refine our reasoning process. Why is continuous learning crucial for effective deduction? Education never truly ends. Even when we reach a high level of proficiency, we must continue to learn and challenge ourselves to avoid complacency and maintain mindful thinking. Cultivating a mindset of constant learning and seeking new experiences helps us refine our skills and adapt to new situations. How can overconfidence hinder deduction? While confidence is important, overconfidence can lead to blindness and errors in judgment. When we become too confident in our abilities, we may overlook crucial evidence or dismiss conflicting information, ultimately hindering our ability to reach an accurate conclusion. What is the significance of the walking stick in the beginning of The Hound of the Baskervilles, and what does it teach us about observation? The walking stick left behind by Dr. Mortimer is a prime example of how our preconceived notions can color our observations and lead to faulty deductions. Watson, upon seeing the stick, immediately jumps to the conclusion that it belongs to an elderly, well-esteemed country practitioner. His deduction is based more on his stereotypical image of such a doctor than on actual details. Holmes, on the other hand, takes a more methodical approach, scrutinizing the stick carefully and considering multiple possibilities before arriving at his conclusion. The walking stick serves as a reminder to be mindful of our own biases and to let the evidence guide our thinking. How does Holmes emphasize the importance of knowing ourselves and our environment before engaging in observation? Holmes demonstrates the importance of self-awareness by using a simple mirror, in this case, a silver coffee pot, to observe the situation before engaging his deductive powers. He highlights the need to understand the context surrounding an observation before making deductions. By pausing and reflecting on the environment and our own potential biases, we can set a clear frame for our observation and avoid jumping to conclusions. What role does imagination play in Holmesian deduction? Imagination isn't about making things up. It's about giving our mind space to consider different possibilities and potential scenarios. Holmes uses his imagination to play with various explanations and to test which one best fits the observed evidence. This stage requires stepping back from the immediate problem and allowing the mind to explore different avenues before settling on a solution. What differentiates Holmes's deductions from Watson's in the case of the walking stick? Watson's deductions are largely based on assumptions and stereotypes. He jumps from observing a sturdy stick to imagining an elderly, esteemed doctor without any real evidence. Holmes, however, bases his deductions strictly on the details he observes, carefully considering all possibilities and eliminating unlikely scenarios based on the evidence. This disciplined approach ensures that his deductions are grounded in fact, not fantasy. #5. Why does the author recommend keeping a decision diary? What can we learn from it? A decision diary, like the migraine diary kept by the author's friend Amy, helps us uncover our habitual thinking patterns and identify common mistakes we make. By recording our observations, inferences, decisions, and outcomes, we can review our thought process over time and notice recurring patterns. This practice allows us to learn from our experiences, recognize our biases, and improve our decision-making in the future. What does the story of the Cottingley fairies teach us about the influence of belief on our judgment? The Cottingley fairies incident, where Arthur Conan Doyle readily accepted photographs of fairies as genuine, highlights how our existing beliefs can blind us to inconsistencies and flaws in evidence. When we strongly want to believe something, we lower our standards of scrutiny and readily accept information that confirms our beliefs, while ignoring or dismissing evidence that contradicts them. How does the concept of the mindset of a hunter relate to Holmesian thinking? The mindset of a hunter encompasses several key aspects of Holmesian thought. It emphasizes being constantly alert and attentive to relevant details, adapting to changing circumstances, acknowledging limitations, and seeking periods of quiet reflection. Cultivating this mindset helps us to stay focused, avoid complacency, and approach problems with a blend of vigilance and flexibility. What is the ultimate lesson we can learn from Sherlock Holmes about how to think? The key takeaway from Holmesian thinking is the importance of being mindful and deliberate in our reasoning. We must be aware of our own biases and limitations, observe carefully and thoughtfully, use our imagination to explore possibilities, and base our conclusions solely on the available evidence. By cultivating a mindset of constant vigilance and a willingness to learn from our mistakes, we can approach the world with a more critical and discerning eye, just like Sherlock Holmes.